So a few weeks ago, I got a message from a subscriber who said him and his son are flying in from Indiana to go to Disneyland and wanted to know if I'd be willing to meet up with them. And I'm like, you've been following the channel, you've been hitting like and subscribe, you've been commenting. You better believe I'll make the time. So let's do this. Let's go meet these gentlemen. All right, say hi.
Hi.
Say like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe.
That's cool. Well, you want to sit in it? Go for it.
Hi.
I'm a huge fan.
Well, thanks, man. I'm appreciative.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. You guys go to Disneyland?
Yeah. When you asked what car we wanted to see, he's like, the Challenger. We're like, you can see a Challenger anytime. A Lambo, you won't get to see that much.
Can you autograph?
Yeah, where do you want me to put the autograph at?
On the hood.
Alright, you got it, dude. That's cool. I don't think I've ever given an autograph, so you're my first one.
He's been over the moon excited.
We'll see, motivated.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's awesome. Look at that. The first one. Well, fist bump, man. Well, you guys have fun on your road trip. Family vacations are the best. I got one left. I got one left.
Say thank you, Kanan.
Well, cool. Well, nice meeting you guys. Have a great, have a great time.
Thank you for taking the time.
Have a great trip. Very nice meeting you. Never fall out of love with cars. Nice meeting you. Well, have a good time. All right, see you guys later. Take care. Thanks for following.
Yep.
Oh. See you guys.
See ya.
Bye. Take care.
You too.
Well, that was awesome. All right, let's get this video started. And welcome back to the channel, everybody. Welcome back to a new video. And yes, I'm going to answer the question that so many of you have been asking me. And I had to go do the research so that I would understand it. And I still think that I maybe understand it about 80 to 85%. So feel free to correct me respectfully, please, in the comment section below. But I'm going to go ahead and address the new Supreme Court decision on the Chevron Deference. The Chevron Deference is a rule that was put into effect back in 1984 under the Reagan administration. Yes, it was a conservative decision that the Republicans had agreed to. Now, I don't want any of this that I talk about today to turn political, but it is. So I'm not going to pick sides. I'm just going to kind of lay it out. Most of you know kind of where I land, but as a car guy. But I think this will help us all understand that there's some strategic dancing that needs to happen before we all can really celebrate. But this is a significant decision and a massive win for car lovers, and I'll explain why in a second. But the Chevron Deference was basically a decision that was made to cover the ambiguity in laws that, let's say, Congress made, where there was a law put in place that, let's just say, for example, with the EPA, or it could have been with finance or securities, it could have any of the administrations, aviation, any of the administrations, a law gets put forward and they write this law, but they don't know how they're going to execute on this law. And that's the ambiguity. So we know that the law is going to be X, but nobody knows how exactly to interpret that law. Well, that Chevron Deference basically created a situation where the default was to the federal agency. So the federal agency would be able to make the determination on the execution of that, the interpretation of that, what it meant, and even all the way through, like we've seen with the EPA and NHTSA, the actual structure of that law, because they were considered to be the experts. They were the experts, the agency being the expert. Now, the reason why the Republicans were good with this back in 1984 under the Reagan administration was because the world was, while still political, was nothing like it is today. And the federal agencies were not as politically driven as they are today. And what happened back then was, okay, we're good with that because theoretically it makes perfect sense. Put the people who are the best experts in charge of coming up with and deciphering and interpreting these laws and then helping execute these laws, kind of like the EPA and NHTSA, who came up with the the CAFE standards, and I believe that was back in 1975. And then the EPA, along with NHTSA, EPA came up with what they would actually be, and then NHTSA will enforce them. So the belief was back then that federal agencies would be neutral. They would simply follow through with the will of the people when it came to the laws and the lawmakers who made these laws, and other laws that maybe had some ambiguity would always just default back to the federal agency. Well, now over the last 40 years, I think everyone watching this would agree that every aspect of our government has become politicized and has become polarized. And at this point, you've got administrations like the EPA and NHTSA that have gone extremely far to the left, and so far to the left that they created the actual standards under the CAFE rules that are so restrictive, so ridiculous, so insane that they're almost impossible to achieve. And as a result, for years now, manufacturers have been paying massive amounts of fines. And the manufacturers, many of them, for sure Dodge, decided that those fines would simply be part of doing business, part of an expense, if you will, on their P&L to build the cars that we all loved. And that was fine. But as things progress, the concern is leading into that, well, not only will they get fined, but they will be told they cannot build cars. And if that were to happen, well, that's the end of the world for these manufacturers. So now they're trapped into following these ridiculous CAFE standards that say that by 2030, I think Biden pushed it to 2032, because even he knows this is impossible to achieve. 2032 is not going to suddenly make it achievable. But the MPG was like over 50 miles per gallon they needed to achieve by that point to the 2032 deadline. That is insane. That is utterly impossible when you think about it. There's no possible way. Now, yes, there could be advancements in different kinds of fuels, but electric cars are the decision that they decided to go for. Yet 60% of the electricity used to charge the electric cars is from fossil fuels. Another almost 20% is from nuclear. So we've got less than, about 20% that are actually from renewables. So that means that we are so far away, and we're in 2024 for God's sake. We are so far away from being able to swing the 20% to 80% with any increase in electric vehicle adoption, which is not happening and has stalled. But that's a different subject, a different video. Talked about it many times before. It's just a failed idea. I think electric cars are a great option for people who they work for.
Frate motete. And then let me get a Trenta pinkety drinkety.
Frinkety pinkety dinky.
Makes sense for, but for other people who don't want anything to do with them, we should never be mandated and forced in having these cars, which goes back to the Chevron Deference and how it's going to affect the EPA. Is the EPA and NHTSA now have to decide, okay, are we going to enforce the rules that we have set forth? Because at this point, because they are no longer considered the end-all be-all authority, it's up to the manufacturers, the auto manufacturers, and the trial lawyers to go and challenge these laws. And at this point, they won't just default from the court deferring over to the EPA or NHTSA and saying, well, since they're the experts, they win. Now it's going to be, give us all the evidence. New experts come in and explain everything. Everybody's side gets heard and something reasonable gets agreed upon. So I believe that could happen, but what manufacturer will take lead in challenging the EPA and NHTSA's CAFE standards and say, nope, you guys no longer have all the power. We want to bring back the Hemi. We want to bring back V8s. We want to stop with this stupid electric car insanity that's not working by every single metric. It's not working as far as a prolific mass adoption plan. It's not working. It's not going to work. Infrastructure can't support it, and many other issues that follow behind it. So the manufacturers now have to decide, okay, we're going to sue and say it's not working. And by the way, it's going to kill our business, and nobody's buying our cars, blah, blah, blah. Well, I don't know who's going to decide to file those lawsuits. There's already been thousands of lawsuits, but they always just defaulted back to the federal agency's decision. And the federal agency, if it falls hard left, then the bottom line is it's never going to change, which the EPA and NHTSA has. So now, at this point, it's up to the manufacturers to file these lawsuits. But again, who's going to do it? Well, here's what I think. It may not be the manufacturers jumping in to be the first ones to go out and challenge this. It may be that as it becomes harder and harder for these manufacturers to achieve those CAFE standards, that as the EPA and NHTSA decide to start fining and enforcing these rules on these manufacturers, that forces the lawsuits, that forces the battles, which means the EPA and NHTSA could very well at this stage be somewhat castrated from their ability to pursue or enforce their rules, knowing that the second they do that, that they're going to be challenged and likely, very likely, be proven to have no power. And then the snowball gets bigger, and it continues to get bigger, and pretty soon the EPA and NHTSA has no power to enforce those CAFE standards, and in court it will be adjudicated and decided on what those standards should be, if they should be even at all. So what I believe will happen is some manufacturers will not achieve, because it's going to get harder and harder and almost impossible too, and then the battles will begin. Because this is huge. This puts the power back into the hands of the people. It almost depoliticizes the entire EPA completely and says you don't get to have the control over this stuff anymore just because you believe what you believe. And that would explain why, if you go to MSNBC or any of the very left-leaning news channels, they're losing their ever-loving minds. They believe this is the end of the world for the Securities and Exchange, for financial, for Medicare, for medical, all the federal departments and agencies that oversee all these things. They think it's going to be complete Armageddon and everybody's going to run wild. And all we care about on this channel is, can we get our damn Hemi back? Can we get some V8s back? And I will tell you right now, depending on who ends up winning the presidency, I think you can all figure out that that president, if he wins, will have significantly less opposition and pushback from the EPA and NHTSA if he wins to completely kibosh the CAFE standards. Cut them in half, if you will. He may come up with a compromise, but at that point, the road is wide open for him to do what he did last time when he rolled them back. But this time, with almost no opposition and massive legal support and support from the Supreme Court, to no longer just default to, well, the EPA and NHTSA knows everything. They know everything, so we're going to trust them and do their insane plan. And this will lead back to new videos you'll see all over the internet, which is NHTSA and the EPA and the left overplayed their hand with this thing by going too far with this climate change stuff. While we all could jump on board with something reasonable, they took it to the unreasonable. They took it to the place of mandating and forcing us as Americans to have to drive electric cars. The second we're mandated or told we have to do something as Americans, that's when we push back. Sometimes we push back for the sake of pushing back. It's not even about the issue, it's about them telling us what freedoms we can have, and telling us we can no longer have the cars we love. Yet this car, this big huge V8 392 that I'm sitting in right now, is about 100 times more efficient than a car that was built 50 years ago with the V8 in it. So we've come a long way, and we've got a long way to go, but no question, fuel efficiency will get better and better and better. Alternative fuels will come, and things will work themselves out. But putting unbelievably impossible restrictive mandates on the manufacturers and then telling us, you are going to have no choice but to drive electric cars, is where we're calling BS. And now the Supreme Court just said, yeah, well, now EPA, and all the federal agencies will not be the end-all be-all. This even affects the IRS. This even affects the FDA. This affects FAA. This affects so many federal agencies. And I think this one is the biggest one for us on this channel because, man, I'm telling you, the tide is really turning. So see what happens in November. I'm not saying who I'm voting for. Y'all can figure this one out. This comes down to, I want a big V8. That's what I want. And I'm thinking between an election and a administration change, along with this decision, man, we've got a lot of opportunity ahead of us to completely unravel and unwind all the stupid insanities that we've been dealing with this last few years. Unfortunately, if you're in California like I am, it's probably going to stay pretty stupid, but that's okay. That's okay. Someday, I will get the hell out of here, just not today. So with that, everybody, please like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.